more I learn later, the more I learn how lucky and fortunate I was to have.
Hi, welcome to the Winners Find a Way show and podcast with your host, Trent M. Clark, three-time World Series coach, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, having started 12 companies, coach to the 1%, and an international speaker. This show is going to be your go-to podcast for facing adversity, being inspired, and overcoming obstacles, all from the best in the world, business, sports, and leadership. Hate the crappy ingredients in many beverages and energy drinks? Rebellious Infusions are the go-to functional beverage. They have 5 or fewer plant-based organic ingredients, no sugar, no calories, loaded with antioxidants to boost your immune system, and L-theanine for brain health. Rebellious Infusions are available at drinkrebellious.com. Rethink your drink. For 10% off of your next purchase, use the code 99999.
Yeah, I think having a vision, for yourself. I mean, the more I learn later, the more I learn how lucky and fortunate I was to have some people in my life that forced me to write things down at an early age and set some goals early. And that had to do with a neighbor of mine who got a scholarship in basketball, who was a good friend of the Judson family, and he was a coach. And having a lot of people in the community that were keeping me on the straight and narrow, but also inspiring me to say, write this down, you can do it. Look at Robbie, look at these other kids, and showing me some examples around the town where it can be done. And the whole idea of having a vision and knowing where you're going and having an accountability where you can look back to is how NCSA grew. I mean, when I started in 2000, I had a goal to get it to a $1.5 million company in 5 years. I put together a plan. In 18 months, we were already at 2 million. So we figured, the idea of being smart enough too is like, we better make some new goals because we already get those.
Reset.
And the longer I live, the more I realize that setting new goals, like a buddy of mine asked me, did you ever think you'd be in Manhattan Beach, living, on the beach, surfing every day when you were in, grade school or high school? I'm like, I didn't know this life existed. Yeah. My goal was to get a college education, play sports, live in Chicago for the rest of my life, and maybe have some success locally there. I didn't know there was anything beyond that. So the idea of reassessing where you're at and then pivoting and setting new goals has really been the kind of next level of helping my success, from living downtown in Chicago, being CEO and founder of a company, to now I'm more of an investor, and I'm at the board level. I sit on the board of Guaranteed Rate Mortgage, my buddy's company. I'm active in YPO and EO, and I'm also doing a bunch of things with my old university at Vanderbilt, helping kids with internships and jobs. So I'm continuing my passion and continuing learning to grow in different capacities now. And most of all, being a husband and a father. I have kids that are 12, 13, and 14 years old in 7th grade, and getting them to write out their goals now is my biggest challenge.
Right. So are your parents still alive?
My mom's still alive. My dad passed a couple years ago, and my mom lives in Wilmington, Delaware. She's turning 80 this year. So a big thing for me is to try to help her live out some bucket list items while she's still in pretty good health. And I have a sister that lives out in Delaware too, or in Pennsylvania.
I really appreciate this as you talk about, when you're a Midwest kid, like, about the Fresh Coast. That's like Michigan, right? And that's not Manhattan Beach, right? Like that is, it's not Cali. In fact, that thing will freeze over in the winter. Yeah. So like, it's a very different feel. And then having never been on a plane till you hit 18 and you've got these options, right? I mean, that's a huge factor. Was there a time, was there a moment? So the show is Winners Find a Way, right? And I love the quote by Chris McChesney from the 4 Disciplines of Execution, right? John Covey and McChesney wrote this book, really good book. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win, right? So my whole life, I've been around people like yourself, pro athletes, obviously. I mean, you run into failure constantly, and people are like up against it. I love this idea of failure recovery, right? Like it's huge. But it's like, so walk us through one of those times where you were up against it and thinking like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this thing. Like everyone's counting me out, down, but not out. And you got yourself back on the horse. I mean, I know there's probably a number of those that you probably had in your life, but can you think of one that you can walk us through?
Well, the whole idea of failing fast. I mean, from the time that we've had a system in place at NCSA where we were having the college, our scouts were calling student athletes directly, And then we switched the system where we had a whole group where we had another division of people that called it set meetings. We did it for a week where we went from having appointment setters for the athletes and then having the scouts actually meet the families to saying just have the scouts call the families. And we went to that, and within 2 or 3 weeks, our production went down by about 50%. And we were at a point where the money was tight, and I had to write a check for $100,000 to cover payroll because we didn't have enough money come in, where we were like on the verge of collapsing. And to be able to switch back and correct that immediately before it was too late, I mean, that is a failure recovery, which could have put the business put it under. We also had a thing where we had early in the company when we had a database that we were putting together where we had a memory leak that caused us to lose our data. And for us to scramble, and literally we worked 24 hours a day recouping and gathering back all these email addresses to all these college coaches to keep the integrity of the database. Bottom line of that is when identifying what it is and putting a strategy together and then putting in the time and the work to correct it, whether it be putting in the time and work in improving my bench press and my 40 time back from high school.
Yeah.
The bottom line is identify where your weakness is and put a plan together to be in the category of what you need to be successful. I mean, those things come up, all the time, and it's just a matter of looking at it as an opportunity to get better. And we embrace those failures and having a team around you that wants to help. Because if you have the right team around you, if there's something that goes wrong, other people will step in and help us when a department goes down or when one of a teammate falls, we help them get back up. And that's part of culture, a culture of it's okay to fail because that's how you grow. It's the same thing like when you're lifting weights. If you lift weights all day long and you don't go to failure where your muscles break down, and you're never going to get stronger.
That's right.
Same thing. It's the exact same thing as the human body.
Yeah, the overload principle. That's it, man.
Yeah.
And I think, I'll tell you what I see a lot. I see a lot of people say, hey, we got a great team. We got a great team, Chris. And then something like this happens where you all of a sudden, it's 4th and goal at your own 9, and you got to or it's 4th and 5 on your own 9, and you've got to make this play to stay in the game, right? Or the game is over. And, guys, I'm clocking out. I'm out. No urgency, no stepping up for the team. And that's when, I see two things. I see, one, the teams that really come together in those scenarios, like you've seen with championship teams who overcome. What a bond is formed when you go through hard things together. Right. And vice versa happens where, hey, we refuse to go through hard things and find out which team members don't really want to be a part of the team. And I'm always shocked by people telling me, hey, we want to have a great team. And I'm like, oh, tell me how hard you're working and how much effort you're putting into getting that team. And like, oh, well, we hire anyone with a pulse, right? I'm like, well, wait a minute. How do you think you're getting the best team members? Think about these universities, because you touched on this. They sent a letter to you, but they sent a letter to 500 other athletes, narrowing this down to the 30 they're going to offer something to, right?
Or 5,000 other athletes.
Yeah, it's a big number, right? When you get the offer, you're one of 10% or something, right? Or 5%. So and by the way, all of them are accredited, have done something. Some coach thinks they're worth something. So all 5,000 could be viable until we get a little deeper into it. But just on paper and on statistics, they're quote unquote viable to that staff. Mm-hmm. And so you're not up against just John Q. Public. You're up against people that have already done something.
Colleges recruit the world now, literally. You're not just if you're best in your conference or your county or your state. That really is not the indicator of whether you're probably going to have college success. There's lots of kids, and you could be a second teamer in a big school in California and be one of the top 5 kids in the country. Literally, depending on their position. But I really kind of go back to culture. I think Sue Enquist, who was the coach at UCLA, won 10 national titles as a softball coach, who's a very dear friend of mine, who's influenced me a lot. I just had a communication with her yesterday. She's just so positive, but she's ingrained in me her theory of, and I think she's a student of John Wooden.
Yes.
John Wooden was the basketball coach, and he was influential influential at UCLA while she was there. But it goes, I don't know if this is Coach Wooden or Coach Enquist, but or a combination of the two. But the 5 characteristics of the championship team is they know where they're going. They have a vision. That coach paints the vision of where we're going. We're going to be champions. They know how they're going to get there. What are they going to do in terms of work ethic? How are they going to work? How they're going to work together? What offense, defense? They have a strategy. Everyone knows their position. What's their job? Do your job on your team. Don't try to do more than your job. If you're an offensive guard, don't try to be a wide receiver. If you're a center, if you're in there to get rebounds and block shots, don't be jacking up threes. Those are things. Know your job, and making it a safe place to fail, where if you do fail, everyone has your back. And the last thing is have fun. And if you do those 5 things, you're going to have something special. And if you hold each other accountable, and just like when you see everybody together when they win the championship and they get together, they love each other. It forms a bond. There's love there. And when you want to work harder for your teammate than you want to work for yourself, that's when greatness is achieved.
I love that. I tell you, those 5 things are, any organization can understand that. Any organization is going and can apply those 5 things. I have been very impressed with Sue. I actually did the John Wooden study of his 55 lessons. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but Sue is a huge part of it. I felt like I have never met Sue Enquist at all, but through that, I felt like I got to know her very well. She was very prominent in her learnings from Coach Wooden and how she applied them. She's very open about, and by the way, massive success at UCLA softball, right? It's no joke, right? And
she's the most influential human in that sport. Sue is she is the goods.
Well, and I think when
she's
I
an
look
incredible
back,
human being, and she's a great surfer too.
Oh, is she? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So, and I think when I've talked about John Wooden to young athletes today, most of them haven't heard of him, and I like to remind them, he was this great basketball coach, but he was a better person. Like, everybody loved John Wooden as a human being, a man of humanity, a man all about helping others get better and get the best potential out of anyone who came near him. And he had a strategy for it, and always willing to come alongside and help those people. And for a guy who won I think 9 of 10 championships in a row, right? I think 9 in a row at one time. The people flew across the world to watch his practice, not to watch games, how he set things up to prepare his team. And I thought that was really cool. So let's talk I got a couple questions for you here before we go. One of the things I would ask you, this one comes up quite a bit. You've had a lot of exposure, a lot of experience in different arenas, right? In the business arena, in the sports arena, in the university arena, top school, top sports, top conferences, one of the top businesses in all of Chicago area. And now you're with, still have been working closely with Endeavor, one of the top programs in the world, right? Top groups. So you've won many games. What's the best battle that you conquered in your lifetime?
I think the battle of having enough confidence to start my own company. I think I never went to college thinking I was going to start a company and be an entrepreneur. I went to college thinking I was going to find my passion in sports, maybe be involved. I started to go pre-med, and I thought about going into physical therapy so that I could help athletes become, rehab themselves if they're injured. So I wanted to be around sports. And it wasn't until I went through the human development program at Vanderbilt where I started learning about the consulting side of the world, where I did sales and management consulting through my internships. And I started learning about how I could be a coach in the business world, where I could kind of use this, and that was my senior thesis, with coaching reminders for improved motivation, was what I did my thesis on. And so when I started to see how the sports world and how the business world are intertwined in certain ways, and I think the best companies are the ones that take the best of the sports concepts and apply them. I was able to kind of know my passion was in sports, but then when I found out that there was still this big chasm of opportunity to help athletes get linked up with colleges, when I've seen all these great kids continuously, even after I'd gone, I figured, the problem was still there. Great kids were getting passed up every year after I graduated. And I'm like, wait a minute, I went back to my old high school. I was volunteer coaching with the football kids. And I still saw, 4, 5, 6 years after I went through the process, even with new technology and, there was still great kids were getting missed. And as I learned more about it, I started working with a company that was helping kids get scholarships called College Prospects of America as kind of a part-time thing. And I was and when they would put a resume together on the athlete and they would send it out to the college coaches, and families would cross their fingers and hope that the response came back, and it actually worked to some degree. And I said, wait a minute,
Sure.
if this thing works, I started seeing opportunity that no one had really figured out how to best help these athletes. And after working with that company for a while, I said, wait a minute, there's a better way. The internet's coming up. There's fax machines, there's computers. Yep. I said, there's got to be a better way. So I started collecting data, and I started helping my local kids out through just email. And everyone said, oh, who's going to look at email? Well, I said, well, I just sent it out to 55 coaches and 25 responded within a half hour. That's what I think works pretty good. And next thing you know,
power of speed.
So we started being able to really put a system that was efficient together, where families could start to evaluate realistically what level they could play at. We could target coaches, and not just the head coach. You send a letter to Mike Krzyzewski and you think he's going to, open it up and write you back. No, but you send it to the assistant coach and one of the assistant coaches that's in charge of recruiting your area. And now we started really finding out who were the recruiters for certain areas in certain sports. Now, we're working 32 different sports, 1,700, there's 42,000 coaches that are in our database, and we're able to hone down and ask the coaches, what do you want to see athletically? What type of videotape do you want to see? What are your key performance indicators? What GPA do you need to have in? What's your ACT members? What parts of the country do you want? And we're able to collate all this and get the right information, accurate information in the right coach's hands. And then once you are able to put those together, the coaches can hit like buttons now and say, hey, I like Trent, and I'd like to see him on my campus someday. And all of a sudden, Trent's parents say, oh, here's 25 coaches that want you on their campus. And all of a sudden, now you're going to schools that have seen you, they like you. They wouldn't be wasting their time if they didn't think that you could contribute probably or have a chance to get in their school. And now we've taken the time and all the wasted time and wasted trips to camps that you don't need to go to, and you're going to the Arizona State baseball camp to get discovered. All these parents think they're going to go to camp and get discovered when they have no business going to that school because they might not even be recruiting a catcher that year. You never know. So it's really making it efficient, but also teaching the kids. It's not mom and dad's responsibility. It's not high school coach's responsibility. It's your responsibility. And if we teach the kids that they're the team captain in this, the coach is part of their scaffolding and help. Mom and dad are part of their help, but the college coaches aren't recruiting mom and dad. College coaches are recruiting student athlete. And once a student athlete knows that if I'm going to invest $100,000 in Trent to come to my university, I want to look him in the eye. I want to shake his hand. I want to know, is he committed to my university and my vision? And is he committed to going to class and getting in the weight room and not doing knucklehead things outside of sports and school, to stay in school and do the right things and be a good leader and be a good representative of my program.
Love that. All right. So let's talk quickly about, you've seen, all this human development from even the university when you learned early. You have a great insight from building this culture, building team members. When you look at somebody, right, and what do you see in their mirror that everyone else might not have looked in the mirror at themselves? What are they missing about themselves? Like, hey, I could be at another level, or I could be, this. What do you see in them that often that you find, winners, champions, all this high potential is sitting in there and they don't know it themselves?
I think it goes back to the question I think you asked me before as far as overcoming adversity. I think the story of every champion is that, look at Michael Jordan. He got cut from the sophomore basketball team. Yeah. And I go back to my, when literally I was in 6th grade, 7th grade, my father demanded I get all A's and B's or I couldn't play sports. In my 7th grade year, I got a C, and he made me sit out the spring season. I couldn't play baseball in the spring because I got a C. And from that day on, I never got to see again. And that was overcoming adversity and teaching me that the academics were a premium. And that helped me a lot. I finished 5th in my high school class. When I got to Vanderbilt, I was on the verge of failing out because it was, I had 127 valedictorians in my freshman class.
Right.
But I got tutors. I went to summer school. I did everything I could. I never worked so hard to get a C in my life. And that helped, but also that helped me to realize that chemistry 102 A and B and the biology and all the pre-med courses I was taking. I think it was a little over my head, and it made me realize I probably wasn't going to go pre-med. I should probably look into another major, which probably was a smart thing. So that setback helped me recalibrate my vision for myself and where I wanted to go, and helped me focus in on the human development program. Same thing with, I had one of my great buddies, Carl Jordan, who was drafted by the Cowboys in the 5th round. He came back, he got cut by the Cowboys, and he was an all SEC defensive tackle. And I said, wait a minute, if this guy can't make it in the NFL, there's no way I'm ever going to make it. So it helped me focus in on my academics, because I knew at that moment, even though I thought I would be an NFL player as I was recruited, I realized then I better focus on the grades, because this football thing is only going to be a couple more years, and then I'm going to be in the real world.
Do you know Eeyore Alan Young in Nashville, who also played at Vanderbilt?
Yeah, in fact, I've connected Alan. In fact, he's been very instrumental, and we've worked together in helping getting the internship program at Vanderbilt together. He's a good friend.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy.
For everyone, I'm going to wrap this show. Thank you, Chris. It's just been awesome. I've always enjoyed our time together. For everyone, follow the show on YouTube Live, our Leadershipity channel. You're going to find more videos on the Leadershipity channel there. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Leadershipity. I am at Trent M. Clark. Of course, my handles are Trent M. Clark or Leadershipity on all the social media. Chris, where can they find you?
You can find me at ckncsa@me.com. That's my email. And you could, I'm all, I have, if you just Google Chris Kraus, you can probably find me on there through LinkedIn and it's Chris Kraus NCSA. I'm, between Wikipedia and everything, I'm in there somewhere. You can find me.
There you go.
But I'm happy if someone wants to reach out to me, email me at my email is the best, ckncsa@me.com. And the book, Athleadership, is not out, but Athletes Wanted, it can be bought through Amazon, and we have digital copies too. If you want one, I'll send you one.
That's awesome. Make sure you look for our upcoming ebook, The Pyramid of Leadershipity, and you can also now take the assessment on the Pyramid of Leadershipity, all about accountability as a leader. And you can find that. Email me, Trent@leadershipity.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening and rate us 5 stars. Always, we work hard to find value delivering stories from 1%ers like Chris and leaders from every episode that are going to assist you in being the best you can be. Okay, time to go to your go-to quote. What, Chris, like a lot of folks got motivation in their life, like, hey, when they're up against it, you go in and like, hey, I need to motivate my team, motivate myself. We're going to have to put our head down and 24 hours and work straight to build all the memory of you just losing all that data in a moment's notice. Unreal, right? Do you have something that you go to that always kind of levels you?
The thing I go to, Trent, is I kind of go back to, people say, what's your definition of success? And I've always looked at success is something that I look internally at. And my father, as a 5th, 6th grader playing little Pop Warner football, I'd say, Dad, how did I do? How did I do? And, and I kept looking for him to say, yeah, great, son, you're great. You're great. You're great. He goes, and then he said, one day he says, Chris, he goes, when you do really, really, really well, you'll know it and won't have to ask me. And I'm like, wow. And that's always stayed with me. And I'm like, from to this day on, I'm like, you know what? And then when I got to high school and I had a really good career and I was all conference and honorable mention all state and I was doing well. And after every game, my dad would say, son, you had a great game. You had this, you had 20 tackles and you did this and did that. And I'd say, no, but I could have done better. So I kind of, the standard was set at such an early age where I was always looking to be better and not looking for that praise. And my dad, I knew I had a good game, but I always wanted to get a better game. And I think going to the point where I know if I did a good job because I did my best, internally is all I need. And that's been something that I know if you do a great job, you won't have to ask anybody to pat you on the back.
I love that. I got 2 things for you because you talked about this education. One is I'll pass is, of course, John Wooden's definition of success, which I love, right? Success is a peace of mind attained only through self-satisfaction, knowing you made the effort to do the best of what you're capable of.
And
I love
right
that.
There.
Yeah, man, I love that because we're always, I think this is a big challenge. And my wife, we're competitive by nature. We're comparing ourselves. We can get into that imposter syndrome of all the things that other people are doing. And the reality is that really success is measured internally. And I love that way you focused in on that because if you did your best. And I think that's great. As I thought about this week doing this together, Chris, I was reminded of a book I've read called The Garden of Peace. It's written by actually a Jewish rabbi. And they really describe something that's really important. You and I have spent time together in Amsterdam, obviously the Chicago area, and now, Cali recently too. So I've always admired, Chris, that you really have put so much time and attention to your family. I think it's really testimony to the values that your parents set up for you. I saw this and I thought of you. It's called the Shalom Bayit, and it's the most important thing, a barometer of a service to God. His lifelong project and his real test in life is peace in his own home. And man, I've thought about all the things you've done to sacrifice, and I always know that family's been on the front of that sacrifice that you've made, and I just admire you for it, Chris. I think it's awesome. Everyone I bring on are usually role models for me in some way. Just like, as I'm working through my failure recovery, right? I'm taking these pieces from those great things I learned from Chris Kraus and from Nick Saban, right? And from Joe Madden and the people I've been around who have these superpowers in these different categories. And listen, you and I both know, we've been around great coaches that we don't love everything about, right? I don't want to do it that way, right? I don't really want that way in my organization. But hey, I'm in theirs and I'm going to follow and abide, right? But I might do it a little differently, But I really, I'm trying to take that into my life and model that after yourself to really make sure that my family comes first. And you model that for me every time I see you, and I'm just grateful for it.
Well, thanks for saying that, Trent. It means a lot, and it keeps me grounded and keeps me focused on trying to do it. Raise these kids and teach them. To a lot is given, a lot is expected, and keep them on the give back culture is really, really at the forefront of what we're trying to do here.
Well, I appreciate for everybody joining us. Thank you for being on joining us at the Winners Find a Way show. For Chris, thank you for being on the show with me as always. Can't wait to our next adventure together. Looking very much forward to that. And for everybody, please, Winners Find a Way show on every Friday, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Chris, any last word?
Oh, thanks for having me, Trent. God bless. And I love what you're doing. Keep on rocking and keep on spreading the love, brother.
I'll do it, man. I'll do it. Thanks.
Hate the crappy ingredients in many beverages and energy drinks? Rebellious Infusions are the go-to functional beverage. They have 5 or fewer plant-based organic ingredients, no sugar, no calories, loaded with antioxidants to boost your immune system, and L-theanine for brain health. Rebellious Infusions are available at drinkrebellious.com. Rethink your drink. For 10% off of your next purchase, use the code 99999. Thank you for listening to the Winners Find a Way show and podcast. Trent, together with the leaders who shared their learning and experiences through this show, are grateful for allowing them to help and support you on your journey to becoming your best. Write a review, rate us 5 stars, and share this episode to your network.